5 people who vanished and came back years later with no memory. Some people go missing and are never seen again. But what happens when they come back? Not after hours. Not after days. But years later. And they return with no memory of where they were, what they experienced, or who they even are. Tonight, we explore 5 real cases, verified and documented, of people who vanished without a trace, only to reappear in ways no one could explain. Let's begin. In 1977, 23-year-old Stephen Kubacki was a college student studying German at Hope College in Michigan. An athletic and intelligent man, he was an experienced cross-country skier and often went on solo trips across the icy landscape surrounding Lake Michigan. On February 20th, Stephen set out for a solo ski trip near Saugatuck. Hours later, someone found his skis and poles abandoned near the edge of the frozen lake. There were footprints leading out onto the ice, but they just stopped. Search teams scoured the area. Nothing, no body. No signs of foul play. Stephen Kubacki had vanished, completely. His family feared the worst. Months passed. Then a year. People moved on. But then, 15 months later, something impossible happened. Stephen woke up in a field in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, 700 miles from where he vanished. He was wearing clothes he didn't recognize. He had a small backpack filled with maps, hitchhiking signs, and strange travel items he didn't remember collecting. He had no memory of the past year and 3 months. Not a single clue. All he knew was that he woke up, feeling like he had just lost time. Stephen refused to speak much publicly about his experience afterward. In interviews, he seemed calm, but guarded. He later became a clinical psychologist and wrote a book titled Meta-Mathematical Foundations of Existence. It explored consciousness, reality, and paradoxes. Many believe Stephen experienced dissociative fugue, a rare psychological condition. Others believe something much stranger happened. But the truth? We may never know where he went, or what happened during those missing 15 months. Audrey Mesdar was a Belgian woman who disappeared in France in 1993. She was 36 years old and lived a quiet life. One day, she simply vanished. There were no signs of a struggle. No trace. Her car was left behind, and her passport remained untouched. Authorities searched, but no clues emerged. Weeks turned into months. Her case went cold. Then, 19 years later, Audrey walked into a police station. She was now 55 years old. She had no memory of who she was. No recollection of the years that had passed. She was discovered in the south of France, confused and disoriented, speaking perfect French but unable to recall her native Belgian dialect. The strangest part? She looked almost unchanged. Medical tests showed no major trauma. No drugs. No brain injury. It was as if she had just skipped time. Authorities tried to reconnect her with her family. But Audrey couldn't remember them. She had no emotional reaction. She was, in many ways, a stranger in her own skin. To this day, she has not explained what happened. She says she doesn't know. Some believe she suffered from a long-term fugue state. Others whisper darker theories: abduction, experimentation, or even time displacement. All we know is this: Audrey disappeared for 19 years, and returned with nothing but questions. In 2002, John Burnside, a retired engineer from Oregon, walked into a local hospital with a head injury. He had no ID. No family, no home. The only thing he remembered was his name, John. Doctors examined him and ran his fingerprints. That's when the story turned eerie. John had been reported missing 31 years earlier, in 1971. Back then, he had a wife, a career, and a normal life. One day, he left for work, and never came home. His car was later found abandoned near a river. Everyone assumed he was dead. But here he was, 3 decades later, still young enough to be recognized by family members, though deeply changed. He had no memory of his life before the accident. No idea where he'd been. Nothing. His former wife visited him. He looked at her like she was a stranger. The only clue was a faint memory of a white room and flashing lights. Doctors said it could be a severe case of amnesia. But skeptics pointed out the strange gap in time, the physical health he maintained, and the haunting detail of those lights. Had John lived off the grid? Was he taken? Or did something more profound take place? He lived quietly after that, never fully recovering his past. Some doors, it seems, only open once. Edgar Latulip was 21 years old when he went missing from Ontario, Canada, in 1986. He had the mental capacity of a child and lived in a group home. One day, he told staff he was going to the movies. He never came back. Search efforts were massive. But years passed, and hope faded. Then, in 2016 to 30 years later, a man walked into a police station claiming he thought he might be Edgar. He had started recovering memories. Names. Places. Feelings. DNA confirmed it, it was him. Edgar had suffered a head injury shortly after leaving his home in 1986. The injury caused memory loss, and he assumed a new identity, living under a different name for decades. He had created an entirely new life, without ever knowing who he truly was. When the memories returned, they came slowly. Like flashes in a dream. His story is tragic, but also miraculous. It reminds us how fragile identity can be. And how a single moment, one injury, can wipe away an entire life. In 1985, Jodie Roberts was a 27-year-old journalist in Tacoma, Washington. She was smart, driven, and respected in her field. One day, she failed to show up for work. Her car was found abandoned with her purse, ID, and keys still inside. Police suspected foul play. 9 days later, she was found over 2,000 miles away, in Colorado. She was confused, disoriented, and had no memory of her identity. Doctors diagnosed her with dissociative fugue. But that wasn't the end of the story. After returning home, Jodie tried to rebuild her life. But something didn't feel right. She eventually disappeared again. This time, for good. Years later, a woman named Jane D. appeared in Alaska. She had a new name. A new family. A new life. DNA confirmed it was Jodie Roberts. She had unknowingly started over, without remembering who she was before. By the time the truth came out, she had lived over a decade under a false identity of her own creation. She wasn't hiding. She truly didn't remember. To this day, she rarely speaks about her past. Some believe stress triggered her fugue state. Others believe her mind was protecting her from something darker. How much of our identity is memory? And what happens when it's erased? These 5 people left our world in the most literal sense. They vanished. They were mourned. Forgotten. Then they came back. Some remembered. Others didn't. Some were harmed. Others were simply blank. Their stories force us to question the nature of consciousness, memory, and time. Where do people go when they disappear like that? Are these just rare mental conditions? Or are there places, spaces, between reality and nothingness that we don't understand? We may never know. But these stories are real. And they remind us that reality is not always what it seems. Thanks for watching. If you found these stories haunting, subscribe to Mindily for more mysterious cases, real disappearances, and unsolved returns from the unknown. Stay aware. Stay open. And never assume